Welcome to Sober Sunrise, a podcast bringing you AA speaker meetings with stories of experience, strength, and hope from around the world. We bring you several new speakers weekly, so be sure to subscribe. If you'd like to help us remain self-supporting, please visit our website at sober-sunrise.com. Whether you join us in the morning or at night, there's nothing better than a sober sunrise. We hope that you enjoy today's speaker.
Through the grace of God and Alcoholics Anonymous, I've enjoyed 34 years of sobriety. And I'm not saying that to impress you, because if you do what your sponsors tell you and embrace the AA program, and practice those 12 steps to the best of your ability and trust God, you know, the sky's the limit of what you can accomplish. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, like I said, some 34 years ago because I wasn't welcome anywhere else. And I can honestly tell you that. And today, it's a little different. I have a family that depends on me, and I enjoy being around. And you know, like Laura was saying, there's just no comfort. It's amazing the people you meet in this program, and how they get involved in your life if you let it. And a lot of the things I became, I wasn't raised to be. I come from a good family. We all, give a lot of those leads. My dad was sober 10 years when he passed away, so I knew the difference between a drunk father and a sober father. He was a member of the Newberg group. But I was going to do it differently, and I was going to be all right. And not only did I become a drunk like him, I became a worse drunk. And I don't know if alcoholism is a family disease other than it affects my wife when I drank, and the rest of it. I don't know if it passed on generation to generation, but there's enough proof in my family that none of us should have drank from after we got out of the womb. But I don't think that's why I became an alcoholic. I didn't become an alcoholic because my dad was a drunk or my uncles are drunks. I became a drunk because I drank too much too often. The other stuff is irrelevant to me. I graduated near the top of my class in industrial arts, not the top of my class, at John Marshall High School, and I chose printing as my trade. And I was going to be the best pressman in the city of Cleveland. That was my goal. I had goals back then. And I strived towards that goal the first year that I worked in that apprenticeship, and I never missed a day's work, and I was never late. I got drafted into the service, and the act I brought home, nobody recognized. And again, I would have it would have happened to me whether I was in the Army, or whether I went to college, or whether I would have continued that apprenticeship. I was well on my way to becoming a drunk long before I went in the service. I served 2 years, and I come home. Any scrapes were minor, and I was able to get out with an honorable discharge. But my drinking had changed, my attitude had changed, and none of my friends and none of the relatives recognized that act, and it didn't get any better from that day on. I went from somebody that was looking forward for me coming back from the service to work for them, to somebody that ended up firing about 3 years later. I got back, and with the GI Bill, I was making a lot of money because they made up the difference between your apprentice wages and journeyman wages, and as long as you were going to a legitimate school. So I went from having almost no money to having a pocket full, and I didn't save any of it. I was drinking every night, and the problems are starting to happen. I'm starting to get in trouble, and not accepting my responsibilities on the job, and having trouble getting to work. And so I thought the best thing I could do was sign up for steady midnights. That way I can drink all day and drink all night and go to work. But around 9 o'clock, the taverns, the lights would be starting to get dim, and about 10 o'clock the girls would come in, the music starts playing, and some of the Irish joints we hung around at, and it became almost impossible sometimes for me to go to work. And like I said, I went on I went from a guy with a lot of potential to a guy that lost his job. I put my union in a position where they couldn't protect me. And I was to do that for many, many times over the next few years, putting myself in positions where people couldn't help me, whether it be relatives or friends or my union. I was consumed with drinking. Everything I did revolved around drinking, and I'd start off every night that it was going to be a good time, and most of the time, towards the end especially, there wasn't too many good times left. Progressively got worse, and I'm living in a cesspool, and I'm constantly in trouble now. And first time I got arrested and I ended up in a workhouse 30 days out in Williamsville, and I got counseled on alcoholism for the first time out there. John Mickley, a longtime member of the Angle, was the counselor out there, and he was going to talk to me about my alcoholism. And I told him I was too young, I played sports, I chased women, and I was skied. I didn't have enough time to be one of those alcoholics. And, I'll just do this 30 days stand on my head. And I did the 30 days. And I left, and the boss, before all this happened, there was a lot more other trouble. After I got fired from that printing job, I ended up, couldn't pay the rent, so they changed the locks on my apartment, and I ended up in the streets for over a year. I know what it is to be a bum in the streets. My mother told me to stay away from the family because I was like a cancer, and it was the toughest thing for her to do to tell her older son that, to hit the bricks that she was trying to raise the rest of my brothers and sisters, my brother and sister. So, I lost that family. And I was sober a year and a half before I went back to see my mother. And that was, there was a 5-year stretch where I didn't see any of my family. So alcohol was robbing me a lot of the things all along, but it wasn't enough of a price to keep me from drinking. So, and then the trouble with the law started, and once you serve one term in the workhouse, if you stood on the ground and get arrested, you're going back out there, and that was no different. I ended up with two more stays out there for 30 days and one for 90. And the company that I was employed by, still in the printing trade, he was getting tired of my act, but during that period of time, I was very busy, so I got away with a lot more than I normally would have. And he'd come out every time I ended up in that workhouse. He'd come out, he'd leave a couple bucks in the commissary, and he'd tell me, "This is it. You're going to get fired if you get in trouble again." And after the 90-day stay, he come out and he said, "This is absolutely the last time." And I was on a $15 a week plan, paying back all this money because he used to bail me out of jail. He'd send a certified check to the jail or to the city of Cleveland or wherever I was arrested. But he put it in my name, and then I'd sign it over. And so I owed a lot of money, to him. And I was on a $15 a week plan. So he talked to me one day. He says, "You got to be more responsible and come to work every day." So I took that to me. Well, maybe if I got married, that'd be all right. I'd get married, and that's good enough responsibility. I'd go to work every day, and so I took this lovely woman out on a Sunday night. I took her out on a Monday night. I proposed her on a Tuesday night at the AA bar on 95th and Denison. And nothing but the high-class places. And to my surprise, I guess she said yes. I pieced this together over the years after we were married because I had very little recollection of that 2-week period. I was on a 2-week wine bender, and now, it's all right for me to do something like we got married the following Thursday, and the only reason why we waited a week was because you had to have blood tests back then, and there was a week waiting period on that. So the following Thursday, we did get married by Mayor Perk, and that was 36 years ago this past October. Best thing that I ever did, but the worst thing she could ever done. I'm a drunk, so I had an excuse for that kind of actions, but my wife didn't. her big night out of town is a half a glass of Chablis and and a dinner. And it was no different back then either. So I thought, and I still think, if there's a misunderstanding, it's all her fault because I didn't know what I was doing when I got in a relationship anyway. It had to be all her fault. So, but I destroyed that relationship with my wife. She looked at me with a look of love and respect in her eyes that I cherished. Because, like I said, it's been so long since anybody looked at me with love and respect in their eyes. Everybody kind of either was non-committal in their looks. You get the blank stares, or they just didn't like you at all. They just walk away. So that's what I was used to. But she was different. I'm not going to get up here and tell you that I love my wife because I didn't know what love was back then. I really didn't. And it wasn't until we had the two girls that I learned from my daughters what love was all about. But I knew she was special. She just had a part of that brain with common sense was missing from her because otherwise she wouldn't have married me. And but I destroyed that look to the look that when you look in someone's eyes and it's just like a blank stare. And I did that in 6 short months. She didn't know when I was coming home, if I was coming home, who was following me or who I thought was following me. I had all kinds of problems. And I dragged her into my cesspool, and her friends and her family. And it didn't get any better. So we thought, well, maybe if we had a kid, that'd help straighten out, a little more responsibility. And we had a daughter, Kelly, and that didn't do it. Now I had 2 women at home, and I'm still not, old enough to being a father or a husband. I'm doing everything that I always did, and not with good success either. So, but she put up with that, and she got pregnant with her second child, and things are really getting bad. Again, what a surprise. The progression of the drunkenness and the trouble kept getting worse every time I got in trouble. And I got fired from that job with the printers, and like I told you, I put my union in a position where they couldn't help me. And about 2 weeks later, something like that, I got hired by Ford Motor, and I got fired there too. So you know that I was had all kinds of problems when you get fired by Ford Motors. It was during that period of time that I had my last bit of problems. To start off, to be a good time, like every other time I went out and got drunk. We had won a championship on the softball team I played on, and as it turned out, like every time we played a championship game and we celebrated that night, I ended up in jail. And that night was no exception. But this time when I started coming around and the jail doors locked, it wasn't a drunk tank, I was in a locked cell. And it seemed forever before they told me what kind of trouble I was in, and I went through all that business that the criminals go through with bond reduction hearings and the like of that. And I made a decision that maybe I shouldn't drink, not even beer anymore. And again, those 3 times I was in the workhouse and I got counseled by Mick, some of the stuff he was telling me during that period of time started to make some sense. A lot different than the workhouse. I was in the old county jail. Was you're stuck in that cell, and there's no moving out. Like in the workhouse, you had a little jobs you did outside of the dormitory, but when in that lockup, you didn't move out of the cell. Only go to the day room and back after a couple hours. I had a whole lot of time to think. And that's when I came to that decision. I shared that with my wife, and she thought that was a real good idea. And she got a hold of a friend of mine whose dad was in AA for a long time. And he told my wife, I can't help him. He's too close to the family. But there's a guy named Eddie Sullivan. And Eddie, he works with losers like your husband. And and you have to be a loser before he work with you in the program. Now, Eddie was sober about 32 years. He was 72 years old. He was retired, and he just loved Alcoholics Anonymous. And he came to that county jail to see a drunk and talk to a drunk, share a story. He told me about bottle gangs. I was in bottle gangs. He told me about loss of jobs. I lost jobs. He told me about losing his family. I lost family. He told me about being financially and spiritually bankrupt. There was no doubt that I was there. And then he told me how good this Alcoholics Anonymous was, how he was able to get sober, hold a job at the city of Cleveland, retire, have a nice house in the West Park area. He paid it off and went on trips with his family. All these material things he talked about, the stuff that I wanted for myself and my family. So he told me that if you're serious about staying sober, give me a call and get out of here. And if I didn't want to go to AA meetings, I should have never called Sullivan, because the typical week was, and this was for 8 straight months. This was our meeting schedule. Monday morning was the Monday morning 12-step group in Lakewood. Monday night was Lorraine Mondays. Tuesday morning was the 41250. Wednesday morning was the West the Chevy group, and then Wednesday night Young People's. Thursday morning was the West Side Morning Group, and the Anglo Thursday night. Friday morning we go to Harvard Broadway Club for the 10:30 in the morning meeting there, and then Friday night we went to West Clifton. Saturday he let me spend time with my 2 daughters, and now we got a little girl, another one, and so I spent time with the women in my life and on Saturdays during the day. And Saturday night was date night. We take our wives to Madison Saturday, and then stop for a sandwich and go to the midnight group. And then Sunday, Sullivan had the habit of, when he got excited to talk about AA, his hands would go 500 miles an hour. He'd rub his hands raw on Sundays because we go to the 1 o'clock Cove group, and then we have just enough time to get to the Kaiser group that was just starting at 4 o'clock out in Parma. Then we go to the Artful Discussion group, which is on Lower Detroit, stop for a quick sandwich, and then we go to the Armory at 9 o'clock. And we did it every day, every week, every month for 8 straight months. I can't sponsor like that. I couldn't sponsor anybody like that, but that's what we did. And we come in a group of people like this at any of those meetings, and you shake hands when you come in, and everybody's happy and smiling. I didn't trust any of you. I thought you were phonies. There's no way in hell anybody could be that happy, especially a whole bunch of you. I didn't know what your game was, but I was going to figure it out before I took a powder or whatever. And the only guy I knew was for real was Sullivan. Sullivan, because I was spending 22 hours a day with him, and I knew he was screwed up during that 8-month period if he wasn't for real. I know why I couldn't trust anybody but Sullivan, and the reason was I couldn't trust myself. I was incapable of that brutal honesty you need to really get into the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and to reach some of the benefits, and the ability to dedicate yourself to this program. And it's not an easy thing to do. And the results were in my guts, because I'm walking around with a ball of fear and anxiety in the pit of my stomach, and I don't know why. It's like a football, it's just churning and churning, and I'm not happy. My poor wife, I'm sober now, and she still isn't doing things right. She changes the baby's diapers too much, not enough. She did yesterday's dishes too many times, and I was kind enough to let her know what her shortcomings were. And but again, all that she cared about was her husband was sober, and even though I was staying out till 2, 3, 4 in the morning, I was coming home sober, and I had to get sober the way I got sober, because my hours were screwy. I never went to bed before 3 or 4 in the morning, and then I get up and go to work. And we used to come out here when the club was over on the other side and shoot pool. couple guys, Steve, myself, and about 7 guys that we hung around with. We used to come out here and shoot pool, because it was open all night at that time. And but we were doing sober things. And my wife didn't mind because I was coming home sober, and she didn't have to worry about me, getting in trouble. So things progressed, and I'm just beside myself because I'm not happy. And I heard it described once as having a belly full of beer and a head full of AA. Well, I didn't have a belly full of beer, but I had a head full of AA, and I don't know why the pain ain't going away. Everybody else is happy. And then I started going to a 12-step discussion group that they went to. They worked with the 12 and 12. And it wasn't until I did that I started, to embrace this program. And there was guys at the Angle that took me under their wing, and I had this bruise right here, right in my chest, and because from them putting their finger in my chest, telling me what a creep I was, but they didn't use that nicer language to me. And they kept exposing me for what I was. I didn't have that capability of, the brutal honesty like I talked about. So they were more than happy to let me know what my shortcomings were. But they also were telling me how to change that. And even though I didn't read the big book at that time, I was seeing it in action every day when I was hanging around with those guys. They welcomed me into their families. We did everything. We played softball. We played, I was in an AA bowling league. We did everything, and that's how I learned about what AA was all about. And then when I finally did get in those steps, the first and second step, the first step was easy because I knew I was crazy and I couldn't guarantee my actions if I drank. So the first one was easy to take. I stayed sober on that first step for a while. Second and third step were tough for me because I had no relationship with God. And I just knew that at the end I was going to pay the price, so I might as well have a good time until, the end came. And it was the example of those guys down at the Angle that helped me get past that, and they convinced me that God wasn't a punishing God, because that was really the issue. Because like I said, I thought I was going to hell anyway, so I might as well just enjoy myself. But it was their example and the way they lived their lives that enabled me to see, that without a God in your life, if you're wasting your time here, you're not going to reap the full benefit of being here. And so I was able to go on to the second and third step, and the fourth and fifth step did what it was supposed to do for me, and it kind of freed me from all that stuff from my past. And the deeper I got in the program, the more that ball of fear and anxiety in the pit of my stomach started going away. And today, if that ball of fear and anxiety starts coming back into my stomach again, it's something I'm doing wrong. And today I got the 12 steps and people that I hang around with to help keep me straight. And again, if I make the corrections, it's not there anymore. So I'm the guy that puts it there, and I'm the guy that can take it away through this program and with the people I hang around with. What a blessing that is to have something to fall back on. Something that we can keep continually feeling good about ourselves. And it's just all we have to do is do the 12 steps and practice those principles in all our affairs. You give it a good shot every day. Praying was another problem I had. And we were out at a football game. We went to championship football games for the high schools, and we stopped at it was in Euclid, and we stopped halfway in the 76 restaurant, and a bunch of those guys from the Angle, big tough guys, they were truck drivers, they were construction workers, and we were sitting in the middle of people like here in that restaurant, and they were talking about loving another human being. They were talking about love of God, trust in God, praying, and that was just embarrassing the hell out of me. I was really embarrassed because only sissies and girls talked about God or and all that stuff and about loving another human being. That's how warped I still was. And again, their example helped me get over that hump, because I'm telling you, these guys were tough guys. I really looked up to them, and they taught me that real men care about other human beings. They love their families. They pray to God for help in the morning, and they thank Him at night, and there was nothing non-masculine about that. And again, thank God for their example, because if they would have sat down and told me to read the book instead of really pushing me to do the things they thought I should be doing, I don't think I'd be here today. So, and because they're pretty tough guys, I listened to them, because I'm not going to get beat up over something small like changing my life. So, but it was a good experience, and as time progressed, I started feeling better. And that transferred to the home, and my wife's happy, and she's got that love and respect in her eyes again. And we're starting to do things. My girls are out of diapers. Their house broke down, so I take them everywhere with me. I was rotating shifts on jobs that I had, where I was laid off a lot because of the economy. And so I spent a lot of time with them. And about the time that they hit about 12 years old and 11 years old, it wasn't cool hanging around with Dad. So my wife had one of those immaculate conceptions, and Pat Jr. was born. And about the time she had him housebroke was when the transition happened, and he started hanging around. And we go on weekend trips. Like I said, it was rotating shifts, so I did a long weekend. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and a Monday. And I call my wife at work, and I tell her, I said, I've got Pat, and we're going to West Virginia. We're going to play some golf. Or I take him into Pennsylvania, and we hit the ball around. And Pat was only about 5 years old. He wasn't in school yet, so he wasn't quite 5. And I had some cut-down clubs for him, and we go play golf out of town and stay at a hotel, and got the biggest kick out of that. And as he got older, he played every sport known to man, and I was able to be there and enjoy that. I wouldn't have been there hadn't it been for this program. I would have met the same fate that a lot of guys and ladies that don't pay attention when they're here, meet. And so AA literally gave me back my family, and I was able to be the father that I should have been, and I was able to be the husband again that my wife thought she married. Jobs were many. I put a lot of jobs out of business, a lot of companies out of business. I worked for 4 city founders. I worked for a couple of small steel companies, and they all went belly up. And I got a job at Republic Steel. They went belly up. And so I had to be real flexible in my ability to work. But whatever it took to support the family. If I had to work 2 jobs making $7 an hour, I did 2 jobs working $7 an hour, and I still went to meetings. I still spent time with my family, and I still enjoyed the baseball games, the softball games, and the bowling, and all that other stuff. I just, cut down on sleep a little bit. Whatever it took, to keep going, that's what we did. My wife went back to work, and during the earlier period in my sobriety, and she told me she's going back to work, and we're going to build our lives stick by stick, and we did. And something we're very proud of, both of us. We started off with early Stellamaris furniture when our friends had French Provincial and early American or whatever. Ours was early Stellamaris, and through hard work and not drinking, and we were able to buy our first house. And we were able to then sell that house and buy another one. All these things that someone was telling me about. We were able to step up to better housing here and there. And then I took a test for a truck driver job with the city, line helper driver with the power company. And I scored number 3 on the test and got hired. And I wasn't going to get involved in union crap anymore. Nothing, no more apprenticeships. Nothing. I'm just going to drive that truck every day, go to work every day, and that's all I was going to do. Because I had it with Dad, and then, so I'd be working that straight day shift, and I'd be just fine. And I don't know how, when opportunities present themselves to alcoholics that are sober, we seem to be, it's almost inherent that we have to go and take advantage of that. And so I did. I ended up taking an apprenticeship. And I ended up financial secretary for the local for 18 years. I didn't want those responsibilities, when I started there, but, things happen. And then as the kids got older, they were in grade school, and I was treasurer of the Athletic Association of St. Thomas More for 18 or 20 years, something like that. I was also president of PTU, and my girls were there. So you can understand how bad a shape that St. Thomas More was when I ended up president of PTU. So, but I try to stay involved with the things that were happening with my children and accepting some of those responsibilities that I used to learn from over the years. Then I was asked to take over a program with the city, an employee assistance program, and so I'm the manager of an employee assistance program for 7,000 city employees. I couldn't have done these things if it wasn't for sobriety and AA. That's some of the stuff that I was able to accomplish just by not drinking and doing what I was told. Some of the coupons I cut out was walking both girls down the aisle in marriage, being in the neighborhood when they had their children. We got a little granddaughter that's 5, she's a kindergartner. And we got a 2-year-old that hangs around up here in Euclid. What a gift. And another thing was, because of what happened during my sobriety, my second oldest daughter, you always have one that takes after you. No, my daughter Katie is the one that takes after me. And she's been sober 7.5 years now, or almost 8 years, something like that. But she felt that there's a comfort level for her coming in this program because of all the time she spent with me down at Stella Maris. And so she had AAs, her whole life, hanging around the house, going to AA functions. We dragged the family to the functions. So it was really easy for her to accept this way, the people, because she'd been around them all her life. It was tough for her to get sober, but it made it easier that she had been part of this for so many years. That was another coupon, My son, when he was in the 5th grade, he wrote a letter, or they were asked to, they did an autobiography during the course of the year, and each chapter was different. One of the chapters was who had the most influence in their life and that they looked up to, and most of the guys in his class wrote about Bernie Kosar, Albert Bell, and stuff like that, the sports figures. And him and his buddy Louie wrote about their dads. And he was only in the 5th grade, what was that, 11 or 12, whatever they are. And I was surprised at the insight he had. He wrote about his dad, being proud of his dad because he helped other people. Even at that young age, he seemed to realize that it was an important thing to do, and he was very proud about that. And I still got that piece of paper, that part, the autobiography. I cherish that like I cherish I would a bar of gold because, you can't buy that. All you have to be is around, and that's what I was. I was around. And, I wasn't part of the problem. I was a part of the solution, after I sobered up. What a blessing that is. I know the feeling of degradation. I know what it is to run in doorways when I was on the streets for over that year. Being too embarrassed to look my friends in the eyes. I know that, and I can feel that, how bad I felt to this day. I remember it like it was yesterday. And I also know that today I don't have to be that way, because the most important gift that I got from Alcoholics Anonymous and staying sober was my self-respect. And not, without that, we're nothing. And so a lot of good things have happened, and I know as sure as I'm standing here today that The only thing that'll take away the self-respect that I have today is a 5/8 ounce of whiskey and a bottle of beer, and it'll be gone, just like that. And I know if I keep hanging around with people like you and practicing those 12 steps to the best of my ability and trusting God, and I won't have to deal with that.
Thank you for listening to Sober Sunrise. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give it a thumbs up as it will help share the message. Until next time, have a great day.